So first we're going to talk about bivariate data. It's data on each of two variables where each value of one of the variables is paired with the value of another variable. So you see this when you have a table of values, right? If you have a table of values with an x and a y, then you have these two numbers that are paired together. A scatter plot can be used to represent bivariate data when the variables are quantitative. All right, so that means that they're measurable. They're number answers, but they're also measurements. Yes?
So like when we're doing like desmos and stuff and we put in like the tables, that's bivariate.
Yeah, very good. All right, so which of the following data sets can we represent with a scatter plot? A, how many pets do you have and how much time do you spend caring for pets? Can we put that on the scatter plot?
No.
I heard a no and I heard a yes. Anybody want to explain their answer?
Oh, yes.
Why?
I don't know.
Okay, how many pets do you have? Is that quantitative? Yes. How much time do you spend caring for pets? Is that quantitative?
Yes.
Yeah, so that one's good. What color are your eyes and how many eyes do you have? What color are your eyes? Is that quantitative? No. So, not that one. What is your favorite movie and what is your favorite book? Are those quantitative?
No.
No. All right, why is the last one tricky? They involve numbers, right? What is your zip code and what is your social security number? So they involve numbers, but they're not quantitative. Who can explain why? Raise your hand if you can explain why those are not quantitative, even though they're numbers. I know that some of you can. Just raise your hand and tell us. Thanks.
Because your zip code could have something to do with like what your security number is, like what number it starts with.
So it's true that they're not really paired, right? There's no pairing between those two. And then also they're not measurements, right? So your zip code, my zip code is 22124. That doesn't measure anything, right? It's just a random zip code that I live in. My social security number is randomly assigned to me. It doesn't measure me at all, okay? So these are not measurements. So this is also not going to be bivariate data, okay? Because even though they're numbers,
So is bivariate data always going to be like numerical?
and measurements. Okay. Next one, sampling methods. When you talk about on your project, you need to describe your sampling method and you need to name it, okay? So naming it will be easy because you just have to pick one of these words. Most of us did which of these? Convenience, voluntary, or simple random? Nor? Which one did we do? Convenience, voluntary, or simple random? You told me earlier. Simple random, very good. We did simple random because we use random.org, right? Now some of you might not have. Some of you may have been absent on that day and you just did something else and you need to describe what you did, okay? Like if you just sent it to your friends, what would that be if you sent it to your friends? Convenience, voluntary, or simple random? Convenience, because you just asked people who were easy to ask, right? Okay, so going down here, name the sampling method. A teacher asks 4 students closest to her what they think of the new cell phone policy. What's that?
Convenience.
It is convenience. Southlakes posts on Instagram to ask students how they feel about signing into the bathrooms. Voluntary, because it's an online poll. And a teacher pulls names out of the hat to determine who presents their projects first. What's that?
Simple random.
Simple random, yes. It's a different way of doing simple random than what we did. Okay. This one is going to be important for making your scatter plot. Independent versus dependent variables. The dependent variable is what happens as a result of the independent variable. Sometimes there is a correlation, but sometimes neither seems dependent on the others. So for example, if there's a correlation between the temperature and the amount of ice cream sales, on a hot day, somebody might buy more ice cream, right? So the ice cream sales might depend on the temperature. There might be a correlation between two other things, but one does not cause the other. And that still will be a correlation, but you might not have a clear X and Y. If there's a clear choice for X and Y, you need to make the right choice. If there's not, you need to describe why. It doesn't really matter which one you pick for X and Y. So in this case, it says circle the dependent variable. Think what depends on what. All right, so would you say height depends on your age or your age depends on your height? Got one vote for height depends on age. Raise your hand if you agree. Okay, good. And it doesn't work forever, right? Like, you know, now I'm like 50 years old, but I'm not growing anymore. So it doesn't work forever. But for a little while, your height depends on your age. So we said the height depends on age. And so height is dependent. The amount you study and the test grade you earn. So does the amount you study depend on the test grade, or does the test grade depend on the amount you study? First or the second? I'm going to say it again. I want everybody to show me one or two. You guys ready? The amount you study depends on the test grade. That's one. The test grade depends on the amount you study. That's two. Show me what your answer is. Good. Two. The test grade depends on the amount you study. Okay, so, wait, nope, I did that wrong, didn't I? The test grade's dependent. Okay. Test grade depends on the amount you study. Test grade is dependent. So that means that if I have these two questions, I better have the test grade in my Y. All right, so it is important what goes in the X and the Y most of the time. Sometimes they don't really, one doesn't really depend on the other. And in that case, it's kind of open, but you still have to describe that. Any questions on this? Okay. On the back, the data cycle. This is the data cycle that we have been working through this whole unit. What happens first in the data cycle? Ask questions happens first. Very good. What happens second? Collect data. And then what?
Organize and represent.
Yep. So collect data, and then organize and represent data, and then finally is analyze your data and communicate your results. So down here, if you had had the time, I was hoping that you were going to write me a sentence about how does your project show ask questions. That one's pretty straightforward. You know, if you're doing slides, a lot of you made a slide that just said my questions. And then how did you analyze the data and communicate the results, right? So there you might describe how you made a prediction and you used your equation to determine how accurate your prediction was. Okay, so this is not a huge deal, but it was to help you think about your project a little bit. Okay.